So are we going to chat? Are we waiting for stragglers? I'm good with any of it because I have a few issues that I want to air on this episode of WTF this week.
Yeah, go
Okay.
for it.
Okay. Here's my first issue. Not even legal. I want everyone's opinion on this. So I go to a lot of industry events, big events. Yeah, the smaller ones, Dine and Learns. Okay. I've been to a few big events. And without naming the events, because candidly, they all have this issue. I found that if you go and you look at the educational programming available for MSPs that attend these events, okay, if you put all of that programming on a wall and you took a dart and you threw the dart at the paper, whatever you hit, okay, whichever topic you hit, as their breakouts and this and that, almost invariably will include the words AI, supercharge, right? Future proof, this, that, all about these amazing new technologies that they're trying to impart to the MSPs, and they should be using them, and that's the future, and so on. Okay. So I think that when I look at that, and I'm trying to think like an MSP, to me, that seems very aspirational. Okay. Aspirational, meaning, use the latest AI to unlock the magic secrets of this and that. And so,
Aspirating, like when you inhale your own vomit after a drunken
well,
binge.
that's what I felt like doing after seeing some of those sessions. But the idea is that MSPs will strive to get to that solution where they can use that and so on. The problem that I saw, though, and this is what I find at all of these shows, is that there are very few, if any, sometimes, sessions about how to teach the MSPs what they need to know, meat and potato stuff, not aspirational. Okay. You're teaching me how to become Batman and fight crime and this and that. I'm trying to figure out how to buy the costume. Where do I get the mask? And then I'll figure out how the Batmobile works. And the idea is that a lot of these MSPs are there because they want to, let's say, cut costs. They say, I got to cut costs by 10%. I don't want to fire my people, but I'm not sure how to do it. How do I maneuver? What do I do as a foundational thing? And you look at these sessions like unlock the magic secrets of this. And that's not what they need. They need more meat and potatoes, more hands-on. So when I went to one of the organizers, let's say of one of the events, and I said, listen, I think you got a lot of aspirational stuff here, which is great. I mean, these events, that's what you're supposed to have, right? The what you could do best and what's coming. And I said, but there's not a lot of meat and potatoes here to help MSPs, like, let's say, cut costs. And the answer that I received was, oh, well, no, they could cut costs by subscribing to one of these solutions because it's AI. It'll help you cut costs. And right, you see, you laugh, but this is how they're thinking. And I said, but what you're saying then is you're telling MSPs that they need to cut costs. You recognize that. So here's what we want you to do. We want you to learn about a new technology at a workshop like this. I want you to buy that technology. I need you to learn how to use it because then you got to get trained. And then at some point in the future, you'll be able to cut costs. I said, that's not what they want. I said, that doesn't help them. And there was no real response to that. Your thoughts are these shows largely aspirational? Do you think that they should have more of this stuff? Because I really do believe that it's a missing piece that they're all guilty of.
I mean, I can chime in on that, and that's one of the things that I drive home is we're not doing the damn basics right. And I come from I mean these guys know it here, but I come from a restaurant background. I've either been in IT or restaurants my entire life. And when I worked in the kitchen, this was
By the way, our pain in the ass industry. Sorry, go on.
exactly.
you picked the two biggest pain in the ass industry, hospitality and IT. Go ahead.
Well, it all transfers over. But anyway, when I was in the kitchen, I literally had the sign up that just said like, do the basics right, because
Right.
it was more of a corporate kitchen, but we had cooks and everything like that, and it's like all we need to do is serve hot food. Like people aren't coming to us for a 5-star thing. We're just they come in because they want beer and food, and like all you gotta do is give a little bit of a shit and make the food hot and fresh, and that's all we need, right? And the same thing with the MSP you're talking about. Like we don't need to give this 5-star enterprise like crazy AI solution. We
Right.
just need to keep their shit secure and make sure it works. And to your point, I think we're a lot, not we collectively, but there is a lot of MSPs out there that are like, oh, I'm just missing this enterprise tool. This is all I need to get to the next level, or what do I need to have in the stack? And it's like, well, how are you to like, what does your service delivery look like? What kind of soft skills do you have in building the relationships? And, how are you aligning to some sort of framework for security? You're just giving them tools and things like that. And there are talks in some of these that do give that. I mean, I'm one of them. Like I have talks on aligning to a framework and how to build a security program. I have talks on how to take people from the restaurant industry and put them into IT. But and friend like other peers in the group, but not just myself, but there are other tech degenerates is another group that does a lot of
Hmm.
the community led talks like this. But I think that is unfortunately the minority, and trying to get more of it. But it is you kind of have to look and pick and choose which ones. But they don't, especially if you're a smaller MSP and you're coming to these, like you're not going to pick those. You're going to say, this is the one because this is what I need. This is the tool I need to change my business, and it's not. So no, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and I don't know why these organizers don't see that. I think maybe, well, because they're largely, they're right. I was about to say they're largely beholden to the vendors, and the vendors are spending money, so they have to put the vendors up, and the vendors are saying, we're going to teach you to fly.
Mhm.
Okay, but most of those attendees, candidly, are small to medium-sized MSPs making anywhere from 500,000 to about 3, 4 million, 5 million range in that, and they're just trying to run their business as a business and learn how to do it best. And they're worried about employment and contracts and budgets and forecasting. And here you are talking about enterprise AI that's going to revolutionize. I don't know. To me, there it's off kilter.
Oh, any of you remember Spiceworks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember, did any of you ever go to the Spice World conference?
No, I remember the Spice Works though.
Yeah. So I was on Spiceworks in the early versions, then got, into the forums a bit, and eventually became a local, um, what was our title? Like a regional Spiceworks coordinator thing.
Right.
So I would organize local meetups, and I went to their national or international conferences. And one of the things they had there was when we had breakout sessions where we
Mhm.
actually did learn stuff, but it was put on by the vendors. Um, they had breakout sessions for the vendors on how to market to IT people, because some
Mhm.
of them did a great job at it, and some of them not so much. Some of them had community managers that, I mean, this was at the time when the term was kind of being coined.
Right.
In fact, Spiceworks called them green guys because they created a program where your name on Spiceworks would show up in green if you were a vendor. And they they used that to um, obviously there was some revenue behind it, but they
Mhm.
also trained the vendors on how to be good vendors in the community. So they let you reply to a post as long as the post um, said something, well, you can do this with PowerShell, and here's the commands, or you can buy our tool and we slap a GUI on it.
Mhm.
So as long as it was helpful without just saying buy our product, they would let that go. But if someone came in and their response to everybody's question was buy our product, it'll fix it for you. Then those posts would get deleted and they get a talking to and maybe booted. So all that to say, I agree with you about the conferences and the buzzword bingo that goes
Mhm.
on and stuff. And yeah, if there was a little bit of coaching on the vendors' parts about, okay, give us something that we could use, and then, you know, sometimes that's enough. You can like let's say Wise Pay or somebody was gonna be up there, and then he started sharing all the information about credit card fees and
Right.
what are legit fees and what are fees that are negotiable, let's say, the ones that the vendors are tacking on. So they share that information so that whatever proposal from payment processing you're looking at, you can ferret out which are the ones that the credit card companies absolutely are charging and you can't negotiate on, and which ones are they tacking on. Like,
Mhm.
okay, that's good information that's reusable. Now I recognize you as an expert in the industry, and okay, yeah, I'll listen to a little bit about your product. Um, I think I think that'd be a good way for for them. It kind of like how you talk about contracts and managing the contracts and how important they are, and then at the end you're like, and by the way, I built a platform for managing contracts.
Mhm.
Um, that's all we need to know. We recognize you as an expert on the matter, and then we know if we have a problem managing our contracts or not. And then if we do, we're like, oh, let's go check out the solution.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, like I said, I think that these, and I agree with you. I think these shows have just gotten a little bit far afield from where they should be, which brings me to my next topic. Okay. um, the next thing that and I actually took notes here when I was at these shows, and I wrote down vendors need to tell MSPs how to sell their services. That's something I noticed. At every show I go to, I see the vendors get up on stage, they're doing their thing. Sometimes they have 5 minutes to speak, sometimes 15, sometimes they'll do a breakout, and they're talking about their service and how wonderful it is and how great it's, it's the best thing since sliced bread. Got it. MSPs have no idea how to sell that.
Mhm.
They don't know how to sell it. They see, okay, you have the great thing. You're saying, look at me, I'm the best. You are the best. Good. How do I sell that to my customer? They don't explain it. So as a result, MSPs buy into a lot of these services, and I see from a legal perspective because they're signing contracts that I'm reviewing. They'll buy into these services, and they'll have no idea how to sell them to their customers, and it fails. I would just like to see. Maybe this is just me venting here. One vendor get up there and say, okay, I got 15 minutes. 5 minutes I'm going to spend telling you how wonderful I am. Great. 10 minutes I'm going to spend telling you how to explain it to your customer to show the value. Right? That's what I think. Anyone agree, disagree, care to debate me?
I agree, but I think it also goes back and falls on the MSP for, again, you're looking for that tool in the stack that's going to change where you're
Right.
looking at it backwards, right? You need to
Mm-hmm.
figure out your service delivery, what you're going to do, what the solutions are, build out how you want to do it, and then go find the product that allows you to do it, or maybe it allows you to do it better. Or there is a one that is better than all the other ones, and because you're using them, you are able to kind of put that in your service delivery method. Again, it's a tool, and if you align how you do things, your processes to that tool, and that tool goes away, well then you're screwed, right? But if you have your business processes and you have the ability to swap out for whatever the current best vendor for you is, then when it inevitably goes away or gets bought out by a large MSP vendor that we all hate, and you might have a thing in your contract saying if you work with this and we don't work with you, and then you swap them out, right? So
Mm-hmm.
kind of goes back to the training of like it's not about the tool, it's about the process and how this tool can help you. So yes, on the vendor side, and I've been in, I mean, I've built out programs at multiple MSPs now, and that's kind of like when I'm interviewing the vendors and stuff like that. Like as soon as I'm like, okay, this is different or this is how it can fit in my stack, it's almost
Right.
like, we like we don't need to have the conversation anymore. Like I'm ready to sign and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
and it's kind of educating that, and then it's been fun to kind of work with those vendors too, because then they're like, hey, can we use your, a quote or whatever, and how we sell this, because then again, they understand their product, their offering, but they might not understand, how to kind of sell that to the MSP. So it is a little bit on both sides.
A little bit on both. Yeah. And I
I got
think,
a slightly different approach. So if I
go ahead.
want to bring on a new vendor or a new offering or whatever, what I'll we charge per user. So I'll just use that as an opportunity to raise their rates and say the sad part is I have to raise your rates. The good part is we're also going to be doing this for you now. Nobody ever kicks back.
Yeah. That like that's your sales technique, and I do the same thing. But when we do that, you and I are looking at our stack and saying, okay, this was not a thing in the past. It now is. I'm going to add this product to address that need, and all my customers are getting it. Like that's how I go about it.
Yeah.
And I'll usually listen to vendors for a few minutes, and then I'll say, it sounds like you have a really cool product, but it solves a problem I don't have. So not interested, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
Well,
so
uh,
far I've just been complaining about a lot of things.
I want to like what is so taking for example, let's say we're
Yeah.
all offering EDR, or at least I hope we are on this call. But what compels you at some point? You go to a trade show, whatever, and you're with just Sentinel One for just an example. Insert whoever, and
We're
so
not picking on Sentinel One.
CrowdStrike goes
Yes.
up there and like blows you away. Like, A, what would they need to say, or B, what needs to happen in order for you to switch the Sentinel One to a CrowdStrike or a Sophos? I mean,
Right. They should be
Yeah.
telling you that. They should be telling you that's what I don't understand. They're big, they're just commercials. But this goes back to my first point about MSPs need guidance, right? Basic guidance about how to do things. Yes, there's a place for aspirational things. I get it. There is. Okay. But they need guidance. And you just brought up an excellent point. They see one solution, they're using one, they see another, they're blown away by it. How do you switch? Who tells them? Nobody. Right? How do you sell it to your customer? Who tells them? Nobody. Nobody's telling them this, but they're talking about how wonderful they are. And this is the big disjoint that I see in the MSP industry. There's a big disjoint between what vendors are offering and what support they'll actually give you and advice they'll give you to implement. There's no implementation advice. And it's almost been like, it's like we were talking about the airlines. We put up with the airlines, right? Because we put up with the airlines. That's why they do what they do.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the same with vendors, right? Maybe it's that, nobody has actually protested and said, I'm not buying your solution until A, you tell me how I switch from where I am to where I need to be. And then B, how I'm going to sell your solution. How am I going to explain this to my customers to make it show value? That's what I think.
That's one piece of it. The only thing that I think is a huge decision point
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
MSPs that happens at conferences is when we see somebody up on stage and then we turn to everybody at the table with us and say, what are you using for EDR? Oh, you switched? Why did you switch? How did that process go? And then we get answers to like your question about like how do you implement it and stuff.
So what you're talking about is, what do they say? Nature abhors a vacuum. So the vacuum left by the vendors was filled by peer groups.
Mm-hmm. And recommendations from a friend always have way more weight than any marketing stuff. So
But, peer groups can only do so much, because the way, it's like trying to describe to somebody how to drive a boat. Okay, we all have the general idea we could describe it, but unless you're on the water and doing it and with the waves and feeling the conditions, it doesn't always work the same way, even though it's the same boat, right? Same boat. It doesn't always work the same way. And I think that that's the same with these solutions, that there are so many waves that every MSP is dealing with on a day-to-day basis, just different pressures and concerns and solutions and all. Peer groups are great. But again, it's sort of like trying to how to drive a boat perfectly when that'll give you some guidance. It should be the vendors that are providing this, and they're not.
Well, I mean, I'm much more interested. Like, if I'm having a conversation over what, MDR or what EDR do you use, I'm more interested in like how it fits in your delivery. Like, how are you offering that? And maybe EDR is a bad example because I mean, it's kind of plug and play as long as you're using one of, I would say, kind of the big four. But
Yeah.
in some of the other stuff, it's more of less like, well, how are you using? How are you offering it? Tell me a little bit about that. And then like at the end, oh, and I use Sentinel-1 to achieve that, or I use CrowdStrike to achieve that. But I'm way more interested in everything before that. Because again, it's not like there's one that's just miles ahead of everyone else. If it would be,
Right.
then everyone would be using it, right?
Everyone
There's a
would use it.
Yeah,
reason
I
that
never tell them
all
the
these different
name of
ones.
the vendor. I just tell them, like for EDR, for example, traditional antivirus is no longer satisfactory. We have to move towards this enhanced detection and response platform. Never say the vendor's name.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't put it on in my products for my internal quoting database. I don't put the product names in there for the
Agreed.
same
I do the
reason.
same thing. And I recommend the same thing, because by not putting the vendor's name in there, you can describe the service in a vendor agnostic way, which allows you to switch amongst vendors, right? Leverage
Exactly.
price points, leverage technologies, whatever it might be. And then you don't have to go back to your customer and explain why you're doing it, because trust me, they'll ask and they'll be very concerned. They're very concerned, even though they don't know what they're talking about. They're very concerned. So, yeah, no, I agree with that, which leads me to my next topic. You dovetailed right into it when you said we don't describe our vendors. Okay. So I think I have said before on this program that the most, and if I haven't, well, I'm saying it now, the most vicious, the most belligerent, the most expensive, the most difficult battles that MSPs have with their customers always relates to a mismanaged expectation. That's what it is. It is very, very rare that an MSP will utterly fail to provide or facilitate a service. That is rare. It does happen, but in my now 26 years of doing this, I can count maybe on two hands in 26 years, number of times when an MSP just failed to provide or facilitate a service. It's on the statement of work, it's on the quote, they didn't deliver it. Okay. What's more likely to happen, and by more, I mean 99.9% of the time, is that the customer will have a mismanaged expectation that leads to friction, that leads to a problem. And the example I gave when I was just speaking up in Boston was this: you pick a time, so it's now 12:35, 12:34. Okay. And I call up anybody. I call up Norm, who's on the line there. I say, Norm, you're my MSP, and I'm going to have my biggest client come in about a half hour. That's 30 minutes. So it's a little after 1. And his files, I can't retrieve them. They're gone. Well, where'd they go? I don't know where they went, but they're gone. And I need your help. So get them back for me. Okay. I got about a half hour. Go. Can he do it? And the answer is no, he can't. Why can't he do it? Because I didn't give you the facts, all of the facts, because our customers never, MSP's customers, they never give you the facts, right? They never give you the facts. So what you're going to do, what Norm's going to do is he's going to log in and he's going to realize that my IT department unmapped drives, I might be crypto locked. It could be a terabyte of information, whatever it is. And he calls me up and says, Brad, I can't do it by 105 or so. I can't do that. But here's what I'll do. 9 a.m. tomorrow, you are up and running. What's my reaction as the customer? Not good, right? Because I'm going to sit here and say, what are you talking about? Where does it say in your document I have to wait 24 hours for my stuff? Where does it say that? Where did, disaster recovery? this is my disaster. I'm asking for recovery. What the hell have they been paying you for all these months? If it takes, this is my recovery. You know, I've heard someone else could give me a faster time. And here we go back and forth. And in this example, it's only an example. Did Norm do something wrong? I was just on the phone with someone. Oh, yeah. Okay, Norm. Right. He's just on the phone asking some customer the same thing. Did Norm do something wrong? No. Norm did nothing wrong. He didn't want to overpromise. Right. Did I, as the customer, do something wrong? No. I've been paying Norm. Where's my stuff? But I have a mismanaged expectation. So my first question is, how often does that happen to you guys? And then I'm going to discuss a solution. But do you find that to be a major problem in your day-to-day operations? Because I can tell you from dealing with MSPs every day, this is the number one problem I see by far.
I wouldn't say major, very infrequently, and
Mhm.
usually only with particularly anal people.
Tell me about that. What do you mean? I
Well,
mean, I
some
know
of
what
them
anal
are
people
just
are,
kind
but
of uppity,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
I've had it happen twice, and both of those times it was with new office manager,
Mhm.
and the new office manager, um, in both cases they didn't really know what they were doing,
Mhm.
but they ran us into the ground with their own incompetence of management.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, yes, new people stepping into the role that need to prove themselves will criticize others. Like,
Or
I don't, you know,
they're trying to bring in whatever
the wrong
company they
vendor.
were working with before.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're
Yep.
Well,
purposely
I
trying
had
to
one that
sabotage you.
I had one that he just didn't know what he was doing. And so he would resurrect a ticket from 2 weeks ago and say, "Hey, what's the status on this?" And I'd panic like, "Hey, did one of my team members drop the ball?" And so I'd go and I'd log in and I'd start checking and everything would look right. And I'd look over the ticket notes and then I'd reply back and I'm like, "I thought we resolved this 2 weeks ago and no one said anything since. Is it not working?" And the response is usually the same.
Mhm.
"Oh, I just wanted to follow up on it." And then I'm like, man, and I just spent all that, I spent a half an hour, checking stuff. So, yeah, that
That's
contract
fine.
when it came up for renewal just didn't renew it. The
Mhm.
other one, um, the staff, they got a new office manager and he didn't know anything. So we wanted to get him off of the on-prem server and migrated to the cloud. And I kept asking about one of their line of business apps. I said, "Are people still using this? It's on your server.
Right.
It's in our notes to install it on everybody's desktop. We've had to set up a VPN and all this other stuff so people outside the office can get to it. Do you really need it?" And, "Well, I need some more information." And kept putting it off. And then also he had people working into the evening hours and they kept calling us for support. And I
Mhm.
kept trying to say, "Hey, we're 8 to 5,
Mhm.
well, these people are down and they can't work." And and then it was like, "Oh, well, yeah, one out of the two monitors was working and she didn't know how to extend her monitors, and like that was a real thing that came through."
The
And I'm
other thing I
like,
always do when I'm talking to a new prospect is explain to them that the only thing I can guarantee you is that we will screw something up. All right. We're not perfect, but when we do, we'll own it and we'll fix it.
yeah. So, but we got to circle back to that. So, um, anyways, these issues are piling up and it was killing me. Before their office manager managed everything and we do, 2, 3 hours of work in a month. And
Right.
then all of a sudden it's like 15 and 20 and rising. And so I kept asking for a meeting to talk about their contract and stuff. And he keeps blowing off my requests. Then one day he calls me and he tells me, um, you keep wanting to bring this up and I got a guy that'll do it for $100 an hour. And I was like, "Take it." and it all of a sudden the wind went out of his sails, and I'm like, I can't compete with that, and I'm getting creamed on this contract.
Mhm.
So if you got a guy that'll do it for $100 an hour and you think it's only going to take a few hours a month, go for it. I can't touch that. That'll be good for you and the company. And then all of a sudden there was the call with the owner and wanted to try to smooth things over. And I'm like, look, you've already said through your emails and phone calls that it's important you get evening support and all this other
Mhm.
stuff, and we're not in a position to provide it. And you've got a guy that's way less expensive than us, so I can't even give you a number on it because I know that it's not going to work for you. And yeah, so that ended that. So I mean, those are my two cases where the expectations just, we weren't gonna meet it. So
Well, I'll tell you, the cases that are on my plate right now involve everything from a customer not receiving a service that it did not realize was not part of the service that they are receiving, right? They signed up for A, B, and C, and they thought A, B, and C included D, E, and F, and it doesn't. That's one. Another involves a customer that doesn't understand that the number of service tickets that are logged and tracked does not mean, or at least an increase in them, does not mean that the MSP did something wrong. In fact, it's arguably the reverse. It means that the MSP is now handling all these issues, and you're dealing with obsolete equipment. And this is why you called in the MSP. It's not, they didn't do something wrong, but the customer doesn't quite understand the relationship between service tickets, what an MSP does, and so forth. So we're just seeing a lot of these kinds of cases in which clients are trying to justify, customers of MSPs are trying to justify getting out of a long-term agreement, right? Getting out of
so that's their their goal is to end the contract.
well, they're ending it. It's sort of a chicken and egg thing. Do they want to end it? So are they manufacturing this? Gee, I don't know why I'm not getting D, E, and F, right? Or is it I'm not getting D, E, and F? Clearly, you don't know what you're doing. I want out of the contract, right? Some cases, I will say, as was pointed out earlier, you get a new person and they want to bring in their new vendor. I have a case dealing with that right now. So they're manufacturing things. So yeah, they'll, like you said, they'll dig up something from 6 months ago and they'll say, "Remember this? You didn't handle it right. It really impacted us. We're terminating."
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
a
and by the
future
way,
ex-wife in divorce court.
right. And by the way, we already have a new vendor and he's ready to transition in. It's like, oh, this is a little premeditated. I see.
I'll
You know.
admit, like I've played that
Mhm.
game myself with a
Mhm.
vendor that wouldn't let, like I let them know 30 days in advance that I didn't want to renew the contract. And then they said, oh no, you need to let us know 60 days in advance.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of thing. And we've done everything to uphold ours. And I'm like, well, the reason I was leaving was because of all these unresolved issues.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, I just started hammering on the tickets and saying,
Been doing it.
hey,
So
yeah,
sometimes you
and
leverage
just,
it to your benefit. But
yeah,
what I would suggest, and this is again part of what I spoke about in Boston this week, is that MSPs have to understand that their customers more than ever really don't understand the scope and nature of what they do. They just don't. And, you know, the way to explain it to them is to give them more information, not less. MSPs are hesitant to give more information because they think that they're either locking themselves into something, right? Or they're going to make promises that they couldn't keep. But what I have found is, and what they don't realize is that by not giving information, okay, customers make it up. They start making
Mhm.
up things, right, about what they should expect. And this is industry style. I've been dealing with lawyers who will say in negotiating the MSP agreements, this is industry standard. No, it isn't. What are you talking about? You're just making it up, right? So how do you address that? And my advice to all MSPs is you have to have a manual. And I may have talked about this before, but I'm going to emphasize it again because I'm telling you, I've seen this so much over the past few weeks. A manual, a service manual, the same way that you have a manual for a television that describes what it does, what it doesn't do, how to program the remote, right? What we can expect from the TV. And it also explains what the manufacturer of the TV expects from you. Right? Don't plug it in while standing in a bathtub. Don't use alkaline batteries. Don't, let it outside where it can rain. Whatever it is, this is what we need from you. And then assuming that you do that, here's what you should expect from the product. Okay. We are selling products. MSPs are selling, they're selling services. Their service is a product. The idea is you have to explain it. So now, going back a few minutes when you said, let's describe our service in a vendor agnostic way. Right. Describe your service in a vendor agnostic way, but tell me what it does. If it's a backup service, right? Think about what your average customer is going to ask about, right? What are they going to ask about? They're going to ask about, how often is my stuff backed up? Okay. Where does it go? Is it encrypted? Because I hear that I needed it to be encrypted, right? Is it encrypted? How long will you keep my stuff? What happens if I sign up to store, a gig, a terabyte rather, and I go over by a couple of gigs? What's it going to cost me, right? If I need to get my stuff back, who do I call and what should I expect? Right? These are the questions. These are nothing I've just said is revolutionary. No one would listen to that list of questions and say, okay, who the hell would ask that? No, everyone would ask that. But, I would challenge MSPs to look at their own documents and say, have you answered those questions for that particular service? Because if you don't, then you have the circumstance where I'm calling Norm and saying, Norm, now you got 15 minutes. Otherwise, it's a breach because you haven't explained things to me. And we don't have to describe those services by vendor. We have to describe it by the service, because at the end of the day, the common denominators between Datto and Barracuda and Acronis and all Acronis, they're all, we could describe them all in a vendor agnostic way. So we don't have to switch it up if we decide to switch between them. Thoughts?
Yeah, we have a service introduction letter when we bring somebody on. It's a couple pages. It basically just describes, how to open a ticket, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. I think that, again, more information is better than none. I'm not saying what you're doing is not good. It's perfectly good. But, what I see happening and what I predict is that as MSPs become more ubiquitous and they involve themselves in more industries with more common folk, everyday people that are now coming to rely on these, they really don't understand what you're doing. And, the same way that when you open up a dishwasher, if you ever buy a dishwasher, there's a sticker in there that says, don't stand on it. Don't use this door as a ladder. You think, who the hell would do that? What idiot? You know what? They do. When I was at the Gaylord Palms
Gotta get that
Hotel.
glass off the top shelf in the cabinet. It's right there.
Right. When I was at the Gaylord Hotel for a conference a month ago or so, there was a sign said, no diving in the hot tub. Who the hell's diving in a hot tub? Well, apparently somebody is, because they had to hang a sign about it, right? At some point, they said, we have to actually convey more information to these people, because otherwise we would think they would know these things, but they don't. So that's what I'm saying to MSPs.
How would you
Is that the
describe the
Gaylord in
relationship?
Denver for the PAX 8 thing?
Yes, I was at the PAX 8 thing.
Did they have a sign that says "Don't crawl in the fireplace" in that giant fireplace they have in the lobby?
Yeah, you'd think that's coming. I mean, it's crazy, but it's true. All these warnings. Why are they there? They're there because obviously, maybe not at that hotel, but somewhere down the line, somebody dove into a hot tub and hurt themselves, right? Or somebody stood on the thing to reach a glass and it cracked. Now we have to warn. But the point is that the manufacturers learned that, actually, not everybody knows what the hell they're supposed to do. We should explain it to them. My point exactly in the MSP industry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I was interrupting who? Mike, somebody, I think.
Yeah, I had a question. So your MSA addendum, how does your service manual relate to your MSA addendum?
Addendum?
So you have your MSA so here's how I'm doing it now, and I think this is what you recommended in your book and stuff. So every quote that goes out, it says, by accepting this quote, you accept our master service agreement.
Right.
Here's the link.
So you
Okay.
have a quote and you have your agreement that's
Yeah.
linked. Go
And
ahead.
it says, we're going to do the stuff and you're going to pay us. Then if they want an MSP contract, there's an MSA addendum saying you're going to pay us this much a month and we're going to provide these services.
No, what I suggest, I'm not saying, look, there's a lot of ways to, right, to skin this cat, but my recommendation is you should be thinking of 3 documents. 3. 1, the MSA, as you said. Those are the ground rules that you're going to post. They don't change. Okay. Next, you will have a services guide. If you're listening to, if you're subscribing to the way I think of things, and the service guide describes all of your services. It'll, if you have our gold plan, here's what you get, and here's what services involved, and here's what's not, what's out of scope, and so list everything in there, your policies, your procedures. Okay. That's posted in a non-indexable, non-public location. Okay. Then you have a quote, statement of work, proposal, service order, whatever you want to call it. I call it a quote, right? That is the 3rd document. That is the document that people accept, that they sign off on electronically, however you do it. And the concept being that document clearly and unequivocally states in it, either at the beginning or above the signature block, somewhere clear, that by accepting this, you accept the terms of our MSA, and you accept the definitions and the scope of our policies as listed in our services guide. Okay, by accepting this, you accept those. If you have any questions, contact us. And now your quote is only a page or 2 long, right? Because everything that it talks about is going to be referenced in the services guide. So if I'm getting the Brad Gross backup disaster recovery plan, that's what it'll say in the quote. Brad Gross backup disaster recovery plan, number of licenses, this, that, maybe a sentence, right? This is our plan that helps ensure that you have your data when you need it most. Okay. Then in the services guide, there'll be an entry, Brad Gross backup disaster plan. If this is in your quote, here's what we do. We're going to install third-party software agents that don't copy personal information. They're triggered with data. And here's how often you get backed up, and here's how much, and here's our policies, and blah, blah, blah. You need to get it back, your stuff. Here's what we do, right? Explain it longhand there. That's how, those are the 3 documents.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've got a couple clients that have Cork and then a bunch that don't.
I'm saying, you said they have
Cork, the cyber warranty.
Oh, yes. In the spirit of candor, I'm outside counsel to Cork. There you go. Yes.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, that right now it's showing up on their quote. But
Right.
all the verbiage about it is on there because I don't have it in my MSA addendum because not all my MSP clients have
Right.
it.
But what if you had,
That
for
makes
example,
sense.
what if you had a services guide and you had a whole section about Cork warranty, right? Great warranty, great
Yep.
product, and say, if Cork warranty appears in your quote, here's what you're getting. Here are the conditions, right? Here's what we need from you. Here are the exclusions and so forth. If you have questions, please let us know. And you could explain it longhand there, because who cares how long it is? It's in your services guide, right?
Yeah.
The example I like to give is if you need to program a remote, this remote for my TV, and I say, okay, how do I do it? So what do? I Google this remote model, whatever. It'll send me to the online manual, and then I'll read it. And it might say, turn to page 86. Do I turn, and while I'm going saying, oh my God, 86 pages? That's crazy. No, what do? As I'm thumbing to page 86, I'm thinking, I hope it's in English. I hope it applies to my remote, right? I hope it works. And then when I'm there, I see the information. The same thing with you guys and all MSPs, right? You can have a services guide that's 20 pages, 30 pages, 100 pages. Who cares? As long as it's organized in a way that people can access it, read it, and get the information they need, It's posted. Who cares how
You're-
long it is?
You're showing your age a little bit there, Brad, by Googling and looking up the manual, because most people nowadays would go to YouTube and look up for a guy that actually shows them how to do it in a video.
That's probably true too. In fact, I think there's a stat that said either YouTube was either the #1 or #2 search engine in the world, right? YouTube was actually the search engine. So yeah, you're right. The only problem with those YouTube videos is that people don't just post it and say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to program this remote. Here we go. They don't. They say, hi, I'm so-and-so. Welcome to my show. Please subscribe. You got to listen to all that crap before they finally get to it. So everybody thinks they're a broadcaster and they're not. Again,
Yeah.
complaining. It's just a whole show of me complaining today, I think. But all right. What else? So what haven't we talked about? I know we only have another couple of minutes. What haven't we talked about? What's on everyone's mind? Nothing. So what have we learned? We've learned that, in my opinion, these shows, if they're listening to the organizers, have to make shows that are more meat and potatoes, down to earth, more relevant to your average MSP attendee. Not aspirational has its place, but you know, aspirational and inspirational could be displaced a little bit by actual practical knowledge. Right, that's one. Two, vendors, if they're listening, I think that they need to teach MSPs how to sell their service. I believe that the vendor that catches on to that concept first will dominate the market. Will dominate, even if it's not as good a service. Even if it's not, you know, it does 9 out of 10 things while someone else does 10 out of 10. If you could explain to why the MSP should have your product and then say, this is how you're going to sell our product, you win. You
We
win.
can probably expect Kaseya to do that soon, since they just publicly announced that they bought the Robin Robbins stuff. Makes sense for them to start trying to extort money out of us to teach us how to do sales.
I don't know about extort, but I agree that, you know, with all, and really being agnostic here about vendors and Kaseya has a ton of solutions, right? Well, I know everyone has their opinion about it. I get it, but they have a ton of solutions. They should be explaining how to sell those solutions. All of them. They have so many. But I wonder, and I mean this, I really don't know. I wonder how many people have those solutions and they say, okay, I got Kaseya, the big company, they have the support. How the hell do I sell this to my customer? I wonder how many of their customers are thinking that. I'll bet you a lot.
Just because we were talking about Cork, they actually give you a letter and suggest you send the letter out to your
That's right.
clients that says, hey, everybody, we're switching to this. And unless you opt out, we're going with it.
Agreed.
So
and I've seen the letter. It was
perfect.
Yeah. And I think that Dan and his folks, Dan Candy, who runs a company, they're on top of that. They're on top of explanation and information, which is probably why they are doing so well, right? Not just it's great service, yes, but when you explain things and you teach people how to sell it to the customer, so everyone, you know, it's a win-win for everyone. Yeah, you own the market. I'm just waiting for other vendors to do it. We'll see. We'll see.
Cork's another one that I didn't sell. I just raised rates and said, we're also including this now.
You could do that too, right? Value add, more value add. So anyway,
of course, I raised the rates more than the increased cost that Cork was going to give me.
That's up to you. How much you want, what the manufacturer suggested retail price is and what your dealership is selling the car for are often two different things. But you know, people pay, your customers pay for value. And if they perceive value, they'll pay. And the only way they're going to perceive value is if you know how the hell to present it to them so it looks valuable, right? If you can present it so it looks valuable, they'll do it. You know, I think that's the key. That's the key for today. So anyway, I know we're at the top of the hour, so I think we must run, right? Unless anyone has anything else.
Well,
all right.
I have to admit, this is one of the few times I've met you. You haven't left me feeling like I wanted a career change.
See that? See that? People change. People can change. See that? I'm glad I left you that way. But anyway, everyone, I appreciate you joining in. Dan, thank you for letting me jump into the spot today. And I guess we'll all see everyone on the next week's episode of WTF.
Yeah. See you later, boys.
All right, guys, take care.